Welcome back to the Training Truth Podcast. This is episode number 5, where we bring you the truth about training. Joining me is my lovely wife and co-host Bethany. Today we're going to cover all about weight training, like what you should do, how you should do it, how you should implement it, what you shouldn't do. So we're going to talk all about training. So this will be a valuable episode for those of you who have questions about weight training. Let's get into it.
All right. So question number 1, what are the fundamental principles every beginner should know about weight training?
I think the most important principles are knowing how many sets to do, like how much volume to do, how many reps to do, and how much weight to use, and then how to progress that. Those are kind of like the 4 pillars of weight training. So sets, reps, volume is sets and reps together, weight, and then progression.
Okay.
And we'll kind of unpack that as we get into the episode.
Yes. If I'm trying to lose weight, should I just lift weights? Should I just do cardio? What should I do?
Sure. So you shouldn't just do cardio, and this is kind of like a common misconception where people are like, well, what's the point of lifting weights? Why, like, if I'm trying to lose weight, I'm probably not going to put on a lot of muscle tissue. And what I'll say is that it's important to lift weights to retain the muscle that you do have. And if you're a beginner, there is a pretty good chance within that short time frame of maybe 3 to 4 months when you're a beginner that you're going to put on some muscle while losing fat. Now that really like slows down dramatically after that time frame. But during that initial 3 to 4 months, like, why wouldn't you want to put on some muscle mass while you're losing some body fat? And so the other thing to know is the reason why I suggest doing weight training with cardio rather than just cardio is because obviously you're going to retain muscle, number 1, but number 2, as you retain muscle, it's going to increase your metabolism. So you're going to burn more calories throughout the day. If you're just doing cardio, there's pretty good chance you're going to lose muscle mass, which is slowly going to decrease the amount of your metabolism basically. And so you're not going to be able to eat as much. You're going to have to decrease the amount of food that you eat. So you want to retain muscle mass through lifting weights and then do some cardio after your workout in order to essentially just get some additional caloric burn. So that's why I recommend that you, even if you're trying to lose body fat, that you would lift weights as part of that.
Yeah, I feel like that's like a very I don't know, 90s thing to be high into.
Yeah, we kind of talked about that
cardio.
Last episode where like cardio is seen as the tool to lose body fat.
Yeah.
But it's really just a tool. There's multiple tools, right? Like number 1, it hinges around caloric deficit. You have to eat less than your body consumes on a daily basis. Eat less than maintenance. Number 2, you should lift weights because you're still going to burn a lot of calories when you're lifting weights, right? And then number 3, you can throw some cardio in there in order to expedite the process. And just think of it as like additional calories burned. And with that, I will say I often get this question: should I eat back the calories that I burned during like a workout session? So like, let's say you're in a 500 calorie day deficit, you burn 300 calories while you're working out. Should you eat back those 300 calories you burn while working out? My answer to that is no. Like, we're considering that extra calorie burn. So eat the 500 calorie day deficit. That will guarantee that you'll lose typically about a pound a week. And then anything from working out will go on top of that. And so you'll typically lose between 1 and 2 pounds a week by doing that.
Also, I don't know if this question is going to be asked or not, but a lot of people I know ask like, well, how long should I do cardio? Should I do cardio first? Should I do it after weight training? Like, what should I do?
That's a great question. So this does get asked pretty frequently. And what I say is, like, you want to give your energy to the most energy demanding task first. And that's lifting weights. Lifting weights just requires more energy than like walking on an incline treadmill, right? You can do that when you're pretty energy depleted. And so the primary goal should be to use the most energy you have for training with weights, and then afterwards you can do some cardio, or you can split them up. Like, some people like doing cardio in the morning and weights on a separate session. That's totally fine. But if you're gonna do it in one session, do the cardio after, because it doesn't require as much energy. You don't want to go into weight training already depleted of energy. Like, you want to go into weight training where you can give your fullest energy, essentially your fullest attempt. And so you definitely want to do it afterwards.
Which makes sense. And then how long?
Oh, yeah. So what I tell people is use minimal effective dose. So what I mean by that is you want to do the least amount that you can do, probably starting around 20 minutes, like probably not less than that, around 20 minutes to get additional results. And so if you're doing 20 minutes, let's say 4 to 5 times a week or 3 to 5 times a week, depending on how many times you're working out, and you're still making good pace, you don't really need to increase it. But if you notice that your fat loss is starting to slow down, then you can increase it. So increase to like 25 minutes and then 30 minutes, etc. You don't really want to start on the high end because then you have nowhere to go, right? You don't have any way to progress that. And so a lot of people, I think, start doing like 45 minutes or 60 minutes directly after weight training. It's like, then what are you going to do when you plateau? Like, then you're going to go to 70 minutes, 80 minutes, and pretty soon you're in the gym for a really long time. And that's just completely unnecessary. So you can just start at like 20 minutes, 25 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week. And then as your weight loss starts to plateau, then you can go up by 5 minutes. And that gives you a lot of runway without having to just like dump enormous amounts of time in it.
Plus, who really wants to do that much cardio?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of boring. There are like people out there that obviously like it, but to me it's kind of boring. Like just walking on an incline treadmill or even doing like the step mill, like I'm just kind of bored. And so you don't want to end up having to do 90 minutes of cardio and you're training for 45 to 60 minutes. And the other thing that you kind of get into is you start doing more cardio than you do weight training.
Yeah.
And so that's giving your body the signal to strip muscle tissue because it's looking for efficiency. And so that's the other reason why you want to start less with cardio and slowly increase, because you want to give your body the right stimulus. You want to maintain muscle mass and lose body fat, right? That's the goal. And so you don't want to start doing 60 minutes of cardio and 60 minutes of weight training because you're already at that even point where it's like you're kind of giving your body two different messages. And so when you get up to like 60, 70, 80, 90 minutes, you're going to start losing more muscle tissue than if you were to keep it a little bit lower, because you're giving your body the stimulus that it needs to be efficient, right? Endurance runners are not like big and bulky. That's because their body is under the predisposition to get efficient, basically. Carry less weight because that's easier to carry, right?
Yeah, makes sense. And honestly, I don't know anyone who can last an hour on the stairs ever.
Yeah, it's impressive.
You gonna die.
Yeah, that's true.
What are the benefits for weight training, like for overall health and wellness?
Yeah, so it's one of the number one things you can do for longevity, and what I mean by that is like health span. And so like if you think about like as you age, right, one of the first things that goes down as far as function is being able to pick things up. So like if you're a grandparent and you're 65 or 70, you still want to be able to reach down and pick up your grandkids. You want to be able to carry your own groceries in. You want to be able to get out of a chair comfortably. Like these are the functions that tend to go away really fast, where the kind of strength-based functions. And by lifting weights, you can carry that into the long term. And it is such that like as long as you train consistently, you can maintain strength for a really long time. I see like some videos once in a while, like these grannies who are like 65, 70, 75, and they're still deadlifting like 200 pounds. It's like, how does that transfer to their real life? Well, a deadlift or a squat is a lot like getting out of a chair. It's a lot like bending over and picking up something off the floor. It's a lot like picking your grandkids up. It's a lot like carrying groceries in. And so it will help keep you independent if you're stronger. And, one of the number one things that we're fighting as we age is sarcopenia, which is basically like your muscles shrink in size as you age. And so it can ward off sarcopenia, which means that you'll retain strength so that you can do life more normally with less help. And really the golden kind of like halo effect of aging is like independence. You want to remain independent as long as you can, and weightlifting will really help with that.
Yeah, which I don't think we think about as much as like the reality is. Like when we worked in the clinic, like 90% of the patients that I met with were talking about like just their daily goals they wanted were to pick up things or hold things or grasp things or carry things.
Right.
And so like, yeah, that's like a huge deal.
Yeah, and it's not even like what we saw over and over again in the clinic is like obviously that, but it's also pain comes with weakness.
Yeah,
like
100%.
Around joints, like the knee pain, the back pain, like the shoulder pain. It's like what happens is like your muscles atrophy and that joint becomes unstable, and then it starts going through these odd ranges of motion. Your like predisposition for injury goes up, and you start just wearing the joint in abnormal ways. And so the number one treatment you can do to fix pain of any sort is to get stronger around the area, which stabilizes the joint, and then you'll go through better range of motion. And so just even warding off pain in general is a huge thing with weightlifting. Obviously you don't want to get injured, right? So do it smart. But warding off pain, strength is directly tied to warding off pain in the long run, so long as you're not, obviously, like I said, injuring yourself. And so there's so many long-term benefits. And what I try to stress to people is like, be as fit as you can as early as you can, right? It's like, so I put on the majority of my size between the age of like 22 and 26-ish, 26, 27. And I've been able to maintain it even working insane hours at the medical clinics, just going to the gym 2 to 3 times a week during that time, because I've already put it on and it takes a lot less energy to maintain. And so I think a lot of people kind of like overlook that. And so you want to be as fit and as strong as you can, as young as you can, because it's really easy to maintain it, but it takes a lot more effort to get it in the first place. And when you're younger, you just get it faster. Yeah. And so that doesn't mean that it's too late to start. Like it's never too late to start. Like if you're 60, start now. If you're 65, start now. The best day to start was yesterday. Second best was today. And so it's like, do what you can right now and get as fit as you can right now. And it makes it immensely easier to carry it into the long term.
That's 100% true. Importance of when weight training, form, and I know a lot of people, and technique. I know like a lot of people really get hung up on that. And so they don't want to move up in weight and then they're stuck. And so,
That's super common. I hear that a lot. And in fact, I get a lot of comments on that where it's like, if I move up in weight, then my form isn't perfect. And so then I don't move up in weight. And here's the thing, like in weightlifting and building muscle and hypertrophy, like you can't sacrifice good for perfect, right? Like you don't want to aim for just perfect, because what happens is you'll never get to the point where you're pushing yourself. Like that works for a little bit when you're a newbie, but once you get stronger and you build a strength base, like those last 2 to 3 reps that you're kind of grinding out, that's where all the gains are, but your form is not going to be perfect, right? And so 80% is good enough. Like if you get it to 80% and your form's 80%, that's good enough. Now this is not licensed to go in there and just be a dummy either, right? Like form is important, but it's like those last 2 to 3 reps are where most of the growth happens. It's where you're really pushing your body. And so if you're sacrificing, those last 2 to 3 reps for perfect, you're just not going to progress very well. Mm-hmm. And so we don't want to let perfect get in the way of good, because in this situation, the good is what's really going to progress you. And so I see a lot of people who are just using like very light weights because they're so concerned about perfect form, because they're afraid of injury is usually what it is. And that has been a detriment to their progress, because they're so concerned and so like neurotic about having perfect form that they don't ever make progress, because they just get like stuck at like whatever poundage that they're doing. And so don't let perfect be the enemy of good. As long as you have good form and you're not doing anything like egregious, like just out of this world dumb, you're going to be okay. And that's actually really important. Like those last 2 to 3 reps, you're supposed to have to grind them out, and your form is going to break down a little bit. And that's totally okay, because you're striving for progress in weight as well as form, right? Mm-hmm. And so I said it over and over again, don't let perfect form get in the way of good form and progression, because you'll stop progressing.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you've encouraged me a lot too to just like add on, like, even if it's like 2.5 pounds or 5 pounds at a time, if you can. And then you also say like with the pain scale.
Yeah, so like, and I think a lot of people like think they need to make big jumps, like 10 pounds on a side, so it's like 20 pounds. You don't need to do that, and you really shouldn't do that. Really, it's like add 2.5s on each side, like you said, add 5s on each side. Do it by the smallest increment that you can, so you can maintain pretty good form, but you're still making forward progress. And then, what was the second thing you said?
Like a pain scale.
Oh, the pain scale. A lot of people like feel, some aches and some discomfort when they start pushing their body, and I want you to know that that's perfectly normal. Like that is normal. Your body is adjusting to a new stimulus, and so it's like I can liken it to this, because I think this is like a different enough. It's like if you go out and run for the first time or jog for the first time, like are your knees going to be maybe a little achy? Maybe. Like if you've been kind of couch bound and stuff like that, it's going to be achy, but you know that you're getting healthier. The same thing is true with weightlifting. Like what I generally tell people is if it causes pain greater than a 3 to 4 out of 10, then you probably need to lighten the weight or change the exercise. But if it's less than a 3 to 4 out of 10, this is just your body adapting to the new load, and it's totally normal. Like even now, I've been training like as like a bodybuilder for 10 years, with some lapses in there for professional reasons. And even now, as I increase weight, my elbows are a little sore, right? My wrists are a little sore, my knees are a little sore, my back might be a little sore. But the thing is like, that's because it's coming under a new stimulus. It's doing something that it hasn't done in a long time, or it hasn't ever done. And so that doesn't mean to stop. Like there's so many people who just stop their progress because they're so afraid of feeling any ache, any like slight pain, any breakdown of form. And ultimately all that does is limit your long-term progress. And so once again, be reasonable, right? It's like, don't be extreme on the other side. It's not no pain, no gain. And it's not, I should have no pain. It's somewhere like, that's a gradient. It's somewhere within the first 30% of no pain. That's what you should aim for.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are like just freaked out of like any amount of pain.
Yeah. And this is you perfectionists. Like perfectionists I see have this all the time. Like people are like, I want this to be perfect. And then they just end up not making great progress because they're so concerned about these things. It's like, relax a little bit. 80% is good enough. Like just relax, and that's how you get stronger. So.
Yeah, 100%. Love the type A people.
Yeah, that's right.
What are some common mistakes for people when they first start weight training, and how can they be avoided?
I would say like the biggest mistake I see newbies make is, number one, they have no plan. Like they're just going in and just like willy-nilly, like I'm going to do this machine, I'm going to do that machine. And so they don't have any knowledge, like they don't have any knowledge at all, and they don't try to acquire any knowledge to be able to figure out how to put this thing together. And, I'm on the side of like activity is better than no activity, so that's better than nothing, but you need to have a plan, okay? So there needs to be a plan put together about how you're going to do this, just like anything else in life. The second thing is when people are in the gym and they're new, they're just kind of like mindlessly like repping out weights, like they're just moving weights. And they think that that's what like weightlifting is all about. But when it comes to like building muscle, you're not I always say like you're not training movements. Like a movement would be like a bench press, that's a movement, right? Or a squat is a movement, or a deadlift is a movement. You're not really focused on training movements, you're focused on training muscles. And so what that means is like, if you're doing a bench press, your goal here is obviously to build your chest, right? So it's like you need to focus on using your chest to move the weight. And you need to be conscious. Like weightlifting is not a mindless activity, it's a mindful activity. And so you need to be conscious about like using the muscle that you're intending to use to move the weight. And you're not moving it mindlessly. You're not like just letting gravity just like pull the weight down. You're in control of the weight and you're mindfully moving the weight. And that's part of the reason why I always say do like a 3-second lowering phase, right? If you're doing a bench press, it should take 3 seconds to reach your chest and then 1 second up. It's like you're in control of the weight. The weight isn't in control of you. Not only that, but that lowering portion of the rep builds more muscle. And so that's like a huge one that I see beginners do. They just go on, they're just in the gym, and they're just kind of like doing bicep curls like this.
I was gonna say everyone has seen them. I mean, it's
Yeah.
people whiling out of the gym, and it's honestly laughable, but yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like, I think that some of it comes down to ego lifting too. Like, don't ego lift. Like, it doesn't matter whether or not you curl, like if you're a beginner, you curl 35s or you curl 20s, because you're gonna get more gains from the 20s if you're mindfully moving the weight than you will the 35s and moving it like a dope. And so I just suggest like, have a plan. Remember, weightlifting and training with weights is a mindful activity, not a mindless activity. And then have control over the weights. Like those are the 3 biggest things I see people mess up on, and that's really where people get injured. It's like they're just doing these like wild things. So, and if you watch anybody train, like who's a bodybuilder or whatever, you can see that they're usually in control of the weights. If they're not, then they're a little out there, and so you should be in control.
Yeah, I had to learn that. That was
And the thing is, like, no judgment. Like everybody starts there. Everybody starts there. Like when I first started lifting weights, I was just like mindfully like just going through the movements, like you know what I mean? And that's where everybody starts. But that's not true like bodybuilding. It's not true like building muscles, right? That's just doing movements and you're just mindlessly doing it. So you want to be mindful.
Yeah, and the hardest one I feel like is the muscle mind connection for back.
Yeah,
like that is seriously
a lot of people struggle with
so hard.
So I'll just give, because like so many people struggle with that, I'll just give like a couple tips. So tip number 1 is like, instead of gripping the bar like this with your thumb, like the handle of the bar with your thumb like around it, grip the bar like this so your hand's more of a hook. And then you want to focus on, instead of pulling from the thumb, focus on pulling from your elbow. So it's like you have a hook and you're pulling from your elbow, right? And so you're thinking about pulling your elbow back, and while you're doing that, you're pinching your shoulder blades together. So if it's like a row like this, you're pinching your shoulder blades together like this. If it's like a pull down like this, you're pinching your shoulder blades together like this. And so those are the things you can think about.
Yeah, and if you have someone who works out with you, I found it helpful when Caleb would always like tap on my back where it was supposed to be, because then I like really had to focus on.
That's right. That's true.
On that specific spot, so that did help, especially in the beginning for me.
Yeah.
How does nutrition play a role in weight training and muscle development?
So, a lot of people I think have this misconception when they're beginners that they can just weight train and they're gonna, just from weight training and maybe doing some cardio, they're gonna build the physique of their dreams. And that is just not true on any level ever. Like you can't just weight train and eat mindlessly or eat how you were eating and make significant changes to your physique. And there's kind of like this built-in paradox in there where it's like during that first 3 to 4 months, it's like you're eating the same in your weight training and your body's changing really nicely. And so you're like, oh, this is all I have to do. And then after that 3 to 4 months, the results slow dramatically, even to a halt. And this is where people die. This is where people kind of like die in the gym. Like this is what like you see the same people year after year after year after year after year looking the exact same. It's because they never changed anything with their nutrition. They're just going in the gym, lifting weights, and just like praying and hoping that something is going to change like physique wise. And so I always say, you know, changing your physique is 90% what you eat and 10% what you do in the gym. Because the gym is just a stimulus, right? It's just cueing your body in, hey, we need to make some change in order to keep up with this weight, in order to, you need to get stronger basically. But what actually determines where you end up physique wise, as far as how you look in the scale, is all determined by nutrition. And so nutrition is 90%, and it is the hardest 90%. Most people can go to the gym and lift weights, and it's fairly enjoyable for a lot of people. It's the nutrition that trips people up. But if you want to make long-term progress, your nutrition has to be on point. Like you cannot, I cannot stress that enough, that it's so much based on nutrition, because you can go in the gym and lift the same weights, right? Lift intensely, but if your nutrition is on point, you're just not going to make changes, like not long-term at least.
Yeah. And I feel like, I could be wrong, but I feel like the more people I talk to, the more that they're like realizing that they have to have a lot of protein in their diet. Like I feel like that's become more of like a
known thing.
Yeah, a known thing.
Yeah.
Which is good, but
Yeah, I do get that a lot. And with the protein thing, it's like, that's impossible to eat that much protein, even you felt that way. And what I always tell people is like, you have to plan. Like you have to plan your protein intake. You have to plan your nutrition intake before you actually start your day. Otherwise, you're gonna have a really hard time hitting it, because it's not like most of us don't have just like a natural desire to eat that much protein, and so we have to like you have to like plan it out and have like a plan. I'm gonna have this, and this, and this is how I'm gonna hit my protein, and that will help you with the nutrition point. Like you have to at least go into the day, maybe not the week, but the day with a plan, and that will help you reach it.
Yeah. Plus, like every meal literally has to be anchored in protein.
Yeah.
Like you just can't have just a meal without it. Like
Yeah.
you have to get creative, and that's what I do. Just blend cottage cheese and everything.
Yeah.
That's like a new fad. Me and my friend just send each other like cottage cheese recipes
Yeah.
and get in that protein.
Yeah.
But how many reps and sets should someone be doing to actually build muscle?
So this is where you get kind of like into controversy online, which I don't know why it's controversial, but there seems to be this argument where it's like, it's all about intensity or it's all about sets and reps, right? Like volume is what they would call it. And there seems to be these like two camps that are like warring with each other, which is stupid, because the people who actually know and have actually built significant physiques, like I've gone from 160 and I've been as large as 240, like it's both, right? So what I'm going to say is like a general rule for people is like for reps, the hypertrophic rep range, and hypertrophy is just a fancy word for building muscle, is 6 to 15 reps. Okay, so that's kind of the rep range you want to live in. As long as you're kind of living in there, you're going to do pretty well. And then the sets is anywhere from, I would say, maybe 6 sets per body part per session for a beginner, up to maybe 12 sets per body part for like an intermediate. And then maybe up to 16 sets per body part per session for like a really advanced lifter. And so what I always tell people is like, you don't necessarily want to pull like that volume, like do as many sets as you can as the first lever, because it's kind of like the cardio thing. Like as soon as you start doing 12 sets, let's say if you're a beginner, you start doing 12 sets on biceps, you know, every workout session, then you don't have a lot of place to go. You just have to keep doing more and more and more volume. And so it's least effective dose. And this is where like the high intensity, low volume people are right, in that like you want to do the least effective dose you can do to get the maximal output. And so for like a newbie, that might be you go and you do 6 sets on biceps, you know, twice a week. So you're doing 12 total sets. And you might do, you know, somewhere between 6 and 15 reps. It really doesn't matter. Like as long as you're falling in that rep range, you're going to make gains. There's some discussion about like some differences between upper and lower body. I firmly believe that for reps for lower body, if you can live in the 12 to 15 rep range, you're actually going to see better gains. I've seen that on me. I've seen that on her. I've seen that on hundreds of clients, people that have just asked me in the gym. As soon as they get up in that higher rep range, their legs just start to explode, as opposed to living in like maybe doing 6 reps. Because it seems like legs, yes, there's a correlation between strength and size, but there is a really tight correlation between volume and size with legs for some reason. They're just different, which makes sense. I mean, we walk on our legs, like we're designed to be active. We're designed to be on our legs really all day, all the time. And so they have the propensity to deal with more volume. So in general, let me kind of just like make it simple. So 6 to 15 reps is the hypertrophic rep range. You can kind of live anywhere in there. And then anywhere from, I'm going to give you total weekly sets, anywhere from something like 10 total weekly sets on a body part to, I would say, maybe 24 total weekly sets on a body part is going to fit about 90% of the population. And so what I mean by total weekly sets is like, let's say you're doing 10 total weekly sets on biceps. That's 3 exercises, about 3 different bicep exercises for 3 to 4 sets per exercise. So you're getting 10 total. And it doesn't really matter how many exercises you use. Like you can do, you know, 1 exercise for 10 sets. You can do 2 exercises for 5. You can do 3 for 3. You can do 4 for 2, right? Like it doesn't really matter. What matters more is the total set volume. Now, I do believe that there is some benefit from changing, from doing like a bicep curl like this, right? Versus a bicep curl like this. But in general, I don't really care how many exercises people do. It's more about total set volume. And so 10 on the lower end, like if you're a beginner, 10 total sets per week per body part is going to be plenty. And then maybe 24 sets per body part per week for like an intermediate to advanced is probably where they should live. So yeah, I would say that's kind of like the general recommendation.
Okay, and then how much weight should someone be lifting?
Yeah.
Weight training.
So instead of like talking about weight, because that's so like her weight is going to be different than my weight, right? Instead of talking about weight, I like to talk about it in the form of like intensity. And so this is kind of like a vague word, but basically what it means is like how hard are you working during the set? And so what I tell people is if you want a guarantee of intensity, like you're guaranteeing that you're working hard enough to get good muscle gains, just take each set to failure to where you physically cannot do another rep. And so like, let's say you're doing bench press, right? And you're gonna do, let's say you're gonna do bench press, you're gonna do 3 sets on it for 10 reps. The goal here is to load up enough weight that you can do 10 reps and like on fail or be really close to failure on that 10th rep on the first set, and then just leave that weight on there and do as many reps as you can for the second set, and leave that weight on there and do as many sets as you can on the third set. And some of you are going to think, well, I'm not going to be able to get 10 on the second and third set, and that's totally okay, because that's part of how you can track whether or not you're doing progressive overload, which is like able to do more and getting stronger. So like, let's say you can do 10 reps on the first set, and you can do 8 on the second, and you can do 6 on the third, week 1. Well, let's say you come in week 2 and you can do 10 with that same weight, and then you can do 10 now on the second set, and now you can do 8 on the third set. Did you get stronger? Obviously you did, right? So that's progressive overload. And then maybe once you get all 10, like you can do 10 for all of them, maybe now it's time to increase the weight. And so there's multiple ways to track whether or not you're getting stronger or more capable in the gym, and that's one really easy way to do it. Just load up the weight that you can do 10 reps on for the exercise, do 10 reps on the first set, rest, and then get as many as you can. Maybe it's 8, maybe it's 9, maybe it's 7 for the second, and then for the third, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 6, right? But you can track that week to week, and as long as those total rep counts are going up, you're making progress, and you can guarantee that you're putting on muscle and you're getting stronger because of that.
And how long should someone rest between sets? I feel like this is a very common question.
Yeah, I tell people 2 to 3 minutes. Like, that's about how long it takes for the energy that your body uses to lift weights, which is ATP, to reassimilate or like recuperate, basically. So you can kind of think of ATP as like little energy molecules, and when you're doing the exercise, you're depleting like your store of it. Like, let's say you go from 100% down to 40% or something like that. And then when you rest about 2 to 3 minutes, you get really close to 100% again, so you can do another set. And so you do want to rest if your primary goal is to build muscle for a little bit longer than like a minute per se, because you're not going to have full ATP stores. And so you want to be able to give that next set your full effort. And so 2 to 3 minutes for hypertrophy building muscle is about right.
Okay, now this is a side question. What do you think of the people at the gym who are like doing some arm machine and then they like run over to another machine and do like a leg thing, and then they like hop over and do like, I don't even know, a different machine, then they circle back to this one? I don't know, is that like giving yourself enough of a break, or is it like...
As long as you're training different muscles, then it's okay. So an example, so those would be called like supersets or giant sets or like a circuit. Like let's say like the first exercise they're doing bicep curls, right? And then the second exercise they're doing like tricep extensions. They're using different muscles, and so technically biceps are resting during that because it's not under load. And then maybe the third exercise they're doing I don't know, like lateral raises, right? They're using different muscles, and so their biceps are resting while they're doing triceps and lateral raises. Now, where people can kind of get in like trouble with this, where they're not really having a lot of rest, is if they're doing, let's say, like a bench press where your triceps are involved, and then you're going and you're doing triceps. Well, now you're doing triceps kind of like back to back, and so you're not getting that rest period. So if you're going to do that, totally okay, but you need to be really strategic about how you pick your supersets or your giant sets or your circuit, so that you're giving yourself adequate rest between each round before you hit that muscle again.
Okay, that makes sense. How long should you wait to train a certain body part again?
Like in days, you mean like rest days?
Yeah.
For most people, it's going to be 48 to 72 hours. Okay, so basically, like what it's shown is that muscle protein synthesis, which is like your muscles building themselves up after training, that typically lasts for about 48 to 72 hours in most people before it starts to dive off again. And so you can train them basically like every second or third day again. Now, obviously, if you're a beginner, you may be really sore, like the second and third day, right? And so you have to tailor this. Like, your body will tell you the truth. Does that mean you can't work out when you're sore? No, like I work out if I'm a little sore, but it's like there's a difference between like a 9 out of 10 on soreness level and a 2 out of 10, right? If you're a 9 out of 10, you should probably rest a little bit longer. If you're a 2 out of 10 on the soreness level, you can probably go again.
Yeah.
And so some of this is just like common sense too. It's like, just listen to your body and it will tell you the truth, right? It's like, if you're really sore after training legs, right, like on Monday, you probably shouldn't train legs 48 hours on Wednesday, right? It's like you should probably maybe wait till Thursday or something like that, or maybe even Friday. And soreness isn't like necessarily a good indicator for, did I have a good workout either? It's more of like, how conditioned are you, right? Because in the beginning, for like the first year, sometimes less for people, but if you're really pushing it for the first year, you're really sore after your workouts. And then as you get more conditioned, your body gets more conditioned to training with weights, that soreness level goes down. And so it's not a really great indicator for having a good workout, and that's where intensity comes in. Like, are you taking these sets to failure? That's a guarantee you're working out hard enough. And so I guess that would be my answer.
Well, and this kind of ties along with it. I feel like this is a myth that some people are like, well, if I want to get bigger, shouldn't I just like train like obsessively these muscles?
Yeah, that's definitely common, and I see it most often right now with women and glutes. Like that's the most common one I see, where they're like, "Well, I train glutes five times a week, or I train glutes 4 times a week." And here's what I'll say: like, your muscles are not actually growing in the gym, right? So when you're in the gym, that's not where your muscles grow. They grow in the rest outside of the gym. And so if you're like in the gym and you're training, let's say glutes, just because that's one I see all the time, and you're doing glutes like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it's like, when are your muscles having the opportunity to recover and get bigger? Because they're not recovering and getting bigger when you're training, they're recovering and getting bigger when you're outside the gym. And so like, you should be waiting 72 hours, because glutes are a big muscle. You can kind of think of like 72 hours for the bigger muscles, right? Quads, glutes, hamstrings, like legs in general, 72 hours, pretty good, before you hit that specific muscle again. Upper body in general, you can kind of do, maybe get away with 48 hours, maybe except for back, maybe that's 72. But if you're just constantly training, you're not recovering, you're not building new tissue, because you're just constantly giving the signal of breakdown, breakdown, breakdown. And so instead, if you actually want to make progress, like much better progress, give them the 48 to 72 hour rest before you hit them again. In fact, I don't recommend you really train any muscle more than 2 times a week. You shouldn't be able to train a muscle more than 2 times a week if you're training intensely enough. Like, you shouldn't be able to train your glutes Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with heavy weights where you're constantly getting stronger. Like, what you'll find is you'll get stronger, then you really fall off, and that means your gains are going to fall off. And so you can kind of use strength, like how strong am I in this movement, as like a break for how often you should train. But in general, just kind of general rules, you definitely don't need to train a muscle more than 2 times a week. And so for like, if you're doing glutes, maybe this is Monday and Thursday, right? Because it's about half of the week. So you get enough recovery that you can go in and intensely train them again. Same thing for chest, same thing for arms, same thing for back, same thing. So twice a week is plenty. I cannot stress enough. It's plenty to grow significant muscle, like musculature. Like, more is not always better. Like, tearing down more is not always better. Like, you have to give your muscles the opportunity to recuperate and grow.
And this goes with that. So a couple weeks ago, I was doing glutes, and then I can only get through like 3 out of my 4 things that I was doing. And the 4th one, because I had like a bad headache and I felt really sick, so I stopped. And then I was like, well, I could do it the next day. And then so I asked you, I was like, should I do it the next day? We got there, and I was like, oh, I have time, should I go do my kickbacks now? And you were like, no.
Yeah, I mean, you've already given it the stimulus. Now you're in rest recovery mode for your glutes. And so like, you should just let your glutes actually recover, so that when you go back in the next day, even though you cut it short, so when you go back in the next day, you're recovered as much as you can be to be able to have a really good glute workout. And those like hyper frequent workouts will work for a short period of time, but if you notice that your strength is not going up, in fact it's staying the same, or it's going down, you know that you're training too much. Like, you're training too much, or potentially you're under eating. And what I often see the most is you're doing both. You're training glutes 4 to 5 times a week, or you're training chest 4 to 5 times a week, and you're not eating enough. So it's like, where does your muscles have the opportunity to repair themselves and like get bigger? Like, you're not allowing them that opportunity. So what's going to happen eventually is you're not going to make strength gains, so you're going to get weaker, which does not equal more muscle, or you're going to injure yourself, which does not equal more muscle. So it's like, slow down. Just slow down a little bit.
Yeah, plus I feel like I see a lot of like girls, especially at the gym, when they're working glutes, they're doing like one exercise for it, but they like go all the time and are just like doing 1 or 2 exercises, and then they're like done.
Yeah, for glutes specifically.
Yeah.
So they're going like, let's say 4 days a week, and they're doing 1 or 2 exercises of glutes each time.
Yes, and it's like
same concept.
Yeah, I know. It's where it's like it's stupid, and you shouldn't do that. Like, just combine more into one day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is a natural thing of like just humans in general. We always think more is better, right? Yeah. We always think, if I do it more, I'm going to get bigger. If I do it more, it's going to be better. It's like, well, then how come the pro bodybuilders who are enhanced out of the gills are still only training body parts maximally 2 times a week, right? So they have all the gear and enhancement support in the world. They're using all of it at high doses, and they're still only training twice a week. It's like, what tells you, why would you think that a natural could get away with more than that? You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, some of it just like look at what's actually worked amongst the bigger population, because it just is not the case with muscle building that doing more is going to forever lead to more results.
Yeah. Also, expect with glutes, legs, like, you're gonna straight feel like you're gonna vomit.
Yeah.
Like, it is the worst training that. So if you're able to train that 4 to 5 times a week, you're doing something wrong. Because I dread like leg and glute day. Like, it's just so miserable.
100%. Yeah. I mean, like, after I get done with leg day, there's no way I could have a comparatively intense leg day the next day, or comparatively intense leg day 2 days from now. And so what I always question is like when people do this, it's like, oh, so you're not lifting maximally, you're not lifting heavy, like you're just going through the motions and throwing on some weight that's fairly easy to lift, and maybe you struggle a little bit, but that's not actually how you build tissue optimally. Like it's not how you build tissue the fastest. Like you have to push yourself, right? And so if you can train them 5 times a week, you're just not training intensely enough. Like flat out, you just aren't. And to really get a good stimulus. So sacrifice frequency for getting a big stimulus and lifting heavy, and you'll have better results.
So then what is a good workout split, and how do you choose which one is right for you?
So a lot of this, like it's kind of like a really broad question actually, and I know people don't mean it that way, but it depends on how frequently you can go. Okay, so I'm just going to give some really easy like sample splits. So like if you know that you can go 3 times a week, right? Probably one of the easiest best splits to do for that is just do like push one day, pull one day, legs one day. And so push would be like chest, shoulders, triceps, any muscles that push, right, for your upper body. And then pull would be any muscles that pull. So this would be biceps and back, and then legs is obviously legs. So if you go 3 times a week, that's a good split, right? If you go 4 times a week, you can do like upper, lower, so upper body, lower body, upper body, lower body. The thing that I don't necessarily like about those is you're in the gym for a really long time, and people don't necessarily like that because like you have to train all of these muscles in your upper body for at least 6 sets each, right? Up to 12 sets each. So you're gonna be in the gym a really long time.
Grief.
And so this is where it's like better to start getting into a split that's more like a bro split or a pro split, where it's like instead of doing upper lower, because you're gonna be in the gym, if you actually want to get a good stimulus, you're gonna be in there forever.
Yeah.
It would be better to do like chest and buys, shoulders and tries, back and legs, right? And this is something where you can get in the gym for 45 to 60 minutes, get your stimulus in and get out and recover, because all the growth happens in nutrition and recovery. And so get in, get your stimulus and get out. That's really like the kind of like mantra that I tell people: get in, get a big stimulus, get out. And so that's like a 4-day split that you could do. You could also do like push, pull legs, like that kind of combination, and then have a bonus day where it's like maybe you want to work on your chest more, so you have another push day. And then 5 days is kind of similar. Like once you get to 5 days, I recommend you do like a bro split, basically, where it's like chest and buys, shoulders and tries, back, legs, and then an improvement day is what I call it, where it's like you're going to do more work from one of those 4 days again to bring up weak body parts. And then if you go 6 days a week and you're kind of like, you're just in the stage of like putting on muscle mass, is more for, I would say, maybe guys. You're just trying to get on as much mass as possible. Then I would do push pull legs, and do that 6 days. If you've already got onto muscle mass and you're more like in the I need to catch body parts up so everything looks great and looks nice and symmetrical, because symmetrical is what is attractive, then I would do chest and buys, shoulders and tries, back, legs, and then have 2 improvement days where I can bring up like weak body parts or body parts that struggle to grow as fast as the rest. And so a lot of it just depends on how many times a week you can go. So I'll just kind of give you the rundown real quick. So 3 days a week, I like push-pull legs. Just do it like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, something like that. 4 times a week, I really like just doing like a full body split across the whole week. So like chest and buys, or you can do chest and tries. Doesn't matter where you put the arms. Chest and buys, shoulders and tries, back and legs. 5 days a week, I like chest and buys, shoulders and tries, back, legs, and an improvement day. 6 days a week, I like that plus 1 more improvement day. Or if you go 6 days a week and you're kind of like just beyond the beginner status and you're a guy and you're really trying to pack on size, you can do push-pull legs twice. So push-pull legs, push-pull legs. Those are kind of like the general splits, and a lot of people get into upper, lower, but they're just not doing enough. They're not actually working hard enough.
Well, that's a lot. Like I feel like
let's
I
say
would
you're
be
doing
exhausted.
8 sets on upper, right? It's like 8, 16, 24, 32, plus your back. That's 40 total sets, right?
Insane.
And if you're resting 3 minutes between sets, right, and it takes you a minute to do a set, that's 4 minutes times 40. You're going to be in the gym for 160 minutes. So over 2 hours, 2 hours and 20 minutes. That's not including cardio. That's not any of that. That's why I recommend, like, there are some hormone things that come into play. Like the longer you're in the gym, the more spike of what are called catabolic hormones that happen. And catabolic hormones means to take away, right? To break down. And so you don't necessarily want to like go for 2-hour gym sessions either, because you start really pumping out catabolic hormones. And so that's why I recommend like 45, maybe up to 90 minutes if you're on a leg day where you just need more rest than 3 minutes. 45 to 90 minutes, that's about kind of the sweet spot where it's like you're getting some catabolic hormones that are squirting, but you're not dragging this out where you're just like in a catabolic state for 2.5 hours, right? So 45 to 90 minutes is the general workout time period that I recommend.
Well, and how do you reduce soreness?
Yeah, this is like everybody wants to know this. Yeah, everybody wants this. You can do some temporary things, like you can do massage, you can do foam roller, you can do stretching. But those of you who have been sore and done those things know that they really don't work that long. It's like maybe you get relief for like 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, something like that, and then it's back. And so really what reduces soreness, like ultimately, is sleep and nutrition. And a lot of people are looking at this on like a really like tiny scale. It's like, well, what should I have before my workout? What should I have after my workout? What's way more important than that? Like a factor of 10 more important than that is, what did you eat 24 hours before your workout, and what are you going to eat 24 hours after your workout, and how much are you sleeping? Okay, because it's like, it's not just the pre-workout meal that your body is running on, it's really the 24 hours prior to that workout that your body is running on. And so you want to make sure that you're fed, that you're having enough protein, that you're hitting your nutrient goals, and that you're sleeping. Those are the two number one things you can do to actually decrease time of soreness. Sleep 8 hours, right? Sleep 9 hours if you can. Sleep 10 hours if you can, right? Take a nap. That's where the majority of the delayed onset muscle soreness decreases: nutrition and sleep. Do not take an Advil, do not take an ibuprofen, do not do that, because the inflammatory response that you're feeling as part of that soreness is what's causing the hormone cascade to build muscle, okay? And so you don't want to get rid of inflammation either. Like, the inflammation is part of the process, and it can hurt your gains if you do that. And so 24 hours before, 24 hours after, and sleep. That's the number one thing that you can do. You can do some things that reduce pain in the meantime, do some self-massage, use the massage gun, whatever. But I'm just telling you, like, that's not gonna last. You might feel better for half an hour or something, but it's gonna be back. And so the most important thing you can do is rest.
Yeah.
And eat right.
Yeah, 100%. And if you're new to working out, just expect soreness.
Yeah, you're gonna be sore. Like, you're gonna be sore. To expect not to be sore is just not, you won't be working out hard enough, especially if you're a newbie, if you're not sore.
Yeah. How does testosterone and cortisol play into weight training, like those hormones?
Well, obviously, like, there is a hormonal basis for like how fat. Like, here's kind of what you can think of for testosterone. Let's talk about the anabolic hormone first. So testosterone kind of dictates like genetic potential, like how big you might get, right? Like whether you're going to cap out at 180 pounds, it's going to really slow down dramatically, or 200 pounds if you're a guy, or 140 pounds for a girl, 150, 160, something like that. Like, it's going to determine to some extent genetic potential, like how big you can get. It's also going to determine how fast you can recover. So if you have more testosterone, you recover faster, so you're able to train faster. And it increases your workout output ability to some degree, right? So it's like, if someone has higher testosterone, typically they have the ability to do more sets, more volume, and still recover well from it than someone who has lower testosterone. And so testosterone is an anabolic hormone, which means that anabolic means to add. And so it will help add muscle tissue. And so having, optimal testosterone is great. Like, if you're an older guy, or even if you're a younger guy, you have low testosterone, I always tell people, go to a doc, get your labs pulled, get it checked, and get it fixed. Like, in today's day and age, like, this is normal. It's not like it was like 10 years ago where it's like impossible to get a TRT script.
Yeah.
It's like, it's now known that it's normal. Low testosterone affects all-cause mortality in the long run, just as like taking like an enormous amount of testosterone can affect it. So you want to be kind of like in that sweet spot. And so go get it fixed. The same thing is true for women. Like, women after the age of 30, I saw this over and over and over in the clinics on the functional medicine side that we did, where women after 30, their testosterone is literally undetectable. And like, the test can't even test it because it's so low. Go get that addressed. Like, you will feel better, you will recover better, you will look better. It decreases depression, it decreases anxiety, increases libido, increases body composition, and you will be healthier because of it. I mean, how many lives did we see that just like radically changed after getting women's hormones corrected, and men's? But I saw even more radical change on the women.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, I saw a lot more women, I guess, come in for their hormones. But I mean, even me, like, I'm under 30, and like, my hormones are not perfect, and I've like felt really crummy at different parts of the month, and so I got them tested. And so even I like have to take stuff, because it's just like, you're if you feel super crappy, like, don't just live like that. Like, there's probably a reason for it.
Yeah, and the number one red flag is if you feel crappy, you can't recover, like you feel tired all the time, it's hormones. Like, if you can't lose body fat, like, you get to a point and it's like you're in a caloric deficit, you are because you're tracking, and you just can't get that body fat stripped off no matter what you do. Hormones, right? So there's some big red flags. And so I always advocate that people, like, if your hormones are low, go get them optimized. Like, it's not taboo anymore. Go get them fixed. You will feel so much better. So that's testosterone. Cortisol is just like one of the catabolic hormones that gets released when you're training. And catabolic, once again, means to break down. And so you do want to manage cortisol levels, and there's some nice like tips and tricks you can do to manage cortisol levels when you're in the gym. Number one, what you can do is you can take an EAA supplement, not BCAA, those are trash. You can take EAAs, essential amino acids. You can take those while you're training. That will help blunt cortisol so you have less catabolic effect from training, which you got to think of as like you're getting a jump start on your recovery by recovering while you're training. That's kind of like the general like analogy I can use. So EAAs, you can have some carbohydrates when you train, even like 20 grams of carbohydrates in the form of a Gatorade or dextrose or cyclic dextrin or just anything like that. That insulin that will be released from those drinks will increase, like that insulin works counteractively with cortisol. So as your insulin goes up, your cortisol kind of goes down. So EAAs plus some carbs intra-workout is really helpful to get a jump start on recovery. So that's a big thing you can do to recover faster is like do some intra-workout nutrition. We're doing some EAAs, usually I recommend 10 to 20 grams, and then do some carb powder or even like a Gatorade, and I usually recommend 20 to 50 grams depending on how big you are. And that will help you recover faster. It will help blunt some of the cortisol effects from training. And obviously cortisol gets released from other things too, stress at work, stress in relationships and all that. And in general, cortisol works against your building goals. So it's like try to cultivate a life that is as low stress as it can be. Like my life when I was a medical executive was not low stress. It was never going to be low stress, but I could do what I can to try to release it, right? To try to like keep it as low as possible, keep a proper perspective, do the mindfulness things, like pay attention, right? And that will help you.
When you were working at the office, like you were like, okay, the house has to be really, really peaceful. Like,
yes, yeah. That is a huge thing.
Yeah.
So like I had like kind of like a mandate, which sounds bad, but it was a mandate. It's like I live in stress 60 to 100 hours a week. And so when I come home, I want peace, right? So it's like whatever we can do to cultivate a peaceful environment, that's what I'm going to do. And that really helped to balance it out because you're going from stress to stress, you're just pumping cortisol all the time. And this is what causes like visceral fat buildup, which is like inside your gut fat buildup, inside your muscle fat buildup. And that's really unhealthy. It's like one of the number one hallmarks of metabolic disorder where like you're having a huge problem with your metabolism and drives up all-cause mortality is having like visceral fat. And cortisol plays a role in that. So it can change how you store fat to some extent too. And so cultivate a peaceful environment where you can control it, right? It's like I couldn't fully control it at the office. I can do the best I can. But it's like at home, I can control that, right? Like we can control that. We can cultivate a peaceful environment.
Yeah, and I mean like more like visually peaceful.
Yeah, visually peaceful, yeah. Like
I mean, if
all
you
these
have
plants,
kids, that's not super peaceful ever, but just like not having a bunch of clutter or just junk all over, like
just being
really helps.
Like proactive.
Yes.
And like if you have a partner like I did that like really helped with that kind of thing, like it was so nice just to come home and have it be peaceful. Like it was clean, we have like plants that cultivates kind of like a peaceful environment. So we're doing what we can that when we're at home we have an environment that is peaceful.
Yeah. Get your Zen on.
Get your Zen on, right? A Zen environment is what I'm after.
How does someone handle plateaus? Because those do happen.
So it kind of depends on which side you're on. Like if you're losing weight and you hit a plateau, the first step is to make sure that you're tracking everything that you eat, right? Because a lot of times people are like, I'm plateaued, but they're not tracking everything. Track everything that you eat so that you know without a shadow of a doubt where your calories are. Number two is you need to adjust your deficit potentially, right? So if you've lost, let's say 40 pounds, like your caloric requirements are a lot less.
Yeah.
And so you need to reassess what your maintenance is and then create a new deficit. And then if your maintenance has met up with your calorie deficit, like we just talked about, then the other thing you can do rather than just dropping calories is you can increase activity. And so let's say you've done all those things and you know, like you actually know because you're tracking consistently that you are in a deficit and you're still not losing weight, that's where you need to go get your hormones checked. So that's the plateau there. Increase activity, decrease calories, but track it all. And then on the other side, as far as like building muscle, if you plateaued, like the scale is not increasing, then you just need to eat more. That's what it is. You got to eat more. And so what I always tell people is like increase it by like 25 grams of carbs a week, something like that. It's like increase, it's 100 calories a day, right? So 700 calories a week, and that should get you moving back up again. And carbs is the easiest thing to manipulate. Like it doesn't take much to add 25 grams of carbs to your daily meal plan. So that's how I break plateaus. And there's some other like tips and tricks, but I really only like use those on clients because they're more involved. But in general, that's like the simple way to break plateaus.
Pros and cons of free weights versus machines.
I mean, the pros of free weights is like you're working stabilizer muscles. Like when you're doing like a dumbbell bench press, you know, the stabilizer muscles are the ones that control this movement, right? And it controls the weight. So you're like, and you'll notice like if you're new, you're kind of like shaky. Like that's your stabilizer muscles working. Yeah, that's like your stabilizer muscles working to try to keep that weight on path. And so that's the benefit of free weights. Machines obviously don't have that because it's guided by a machine. As far as like bodybuilding goes, or just like building a physique that looks good, I don't really care whether someone does free weights or machines, other than making sure they do some full body movements, like either a squat or a deadlift or something like that. And that's really because it's a functional movement. Like it helps you transition to later life well. But otherwise, like remember, I said we're not training like movements, we're training muscles. And so, you know, a lot of my work is made up of machines, and I have some free weights in there, but a lot of it's machines. And it's because I'm training muscles, not like when I'm bodybuilding, I'm training muscles, not movements. And so I don't really care whether or not someone does free weights or machines. Neither one is better specifically for bodybuilding. The number one important thing is adherence, like you're doing it consistently. Number two is progressive overload, you're continuing to get stronger. And then number three is mind to muscle connection. Like, are you contracting the muscle you're intending to? And machines tend to be that you can get a better mind to muscle connection because you're not having to worry about stabilization. And so I don't really care either way whether someone does free weights or machines. What I care about are those three things as far as just physique transformation. Now, if you're an athlete or like you're doing some sort of athletic venture, that changes the game because you're obviously having to use stabilizer muscles as part of your sport. Then you should definitely use more free weights because it's like you want to train just like you compete, right? So specific stimulus for specific outcome.
Yeah, when I first started with the free weights, it was embarrassing. Like I literally, no, I was like with 10 pounds and like literally like, hit myself in the head a couple times because like my arm was like so shaky, like doing the one behind my head. Yeah, it was bad. Now I'm so much better. Like I literally, after, I don't even know, months and months of doing it, I was like, I'm done. I just want to use machines. And Caleb was like, oh, it like works your stabilizer muscles. You should do it. And so I was like, oh, okay, I guess that makes sense. So then I kept up with it. And now it's like way more like, I feel like I have control of it. Yes. And I'm not like derping out hardcore. Yeah. But it was really embarrassing.
I do think as a beginner, there's some benefit to doing maybe like 50% as free weights just to train those stabilizer muscles. But some of hers too, she was having like neck pain and back pain and shoulder pain.
Yeah, that's true.
And so it's like, I wanted to make sure that we were hitting all of those muscles, like, because she was having pain. And so that was part of the reason why I was pushing her in the free weight area, just so that I made sure that all of them are being stimulated basically. So if you're a beginner, I do think there's benefits to doing some free weight training for stabilization, but as you get more advanced, like, you know, like I did powerlifting for a long time, it's like I can bench 465, or I could bench 465, so obviously I have stabilizer muscles. And so like when I transition to bodybuilding, it's like I can do machines because I just have better mind and muscle connection. So
yeah, 100%, that's true. A lot of people want to work in like flexibility, mobility. Yeah. How does that work into weight training? Yeah.
Here's what I'll say. Like, there's this kind of like mantra that you can remember, and it's you don't stretch to warm up, you warm up to stretch. Okay, so I learned that in college.
I think I hear that in my sleep.
Yeah, I heard that for the first time like doing college track. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so good. So you don't stretch to warm up, you warm up to stretch. So you should not be stretching before you lift weights. Number one, it increases your injury potential. Number two, it decreases your power output. So you obviously want some power output because you're trying to train with weights and get stronger. And stretching does not decrease injury potential, like at all. It doesn't decrease, is what the studies have found. And so if mobility is important to you, which that's totally okay, stretch after your workout. You should stretch post weight training. And, you know, there's some times like when I was like powerlifting, I deadlifted sumo, so like wide stance, and I had a hard time getting my hips in the right position. That would be an instance where I would work in mobility work afterwards so that I could be more flexible to get my hips in the optimal position. Because it's like my feet are like wide, my hips are opened up, and I was like had some tension there where I couldn't lift as much weight if I could get more flexible like in my adductors. And so what I say is like if you want mobility, make sure that you're doing mobility for a specific purpose, right? Yeah. Stretching to reduce injury, that's not real. And so if you're doing it, it's totally okay, but do it for a specific purpose, right? Or maybe it's just like life. Maybe you want to be able to sit Indian style. Like I don't care about that. But if you want to sit Indian style, all right, then like mobility work will be important, but do it after your weight training session.
Which makes sense. Okay, last thing. What would be your top 3 pieces of advice for someone who wants to take their weight training to the next level?
Number 1, cannot stress this enough, have a plan. Like have a plan of progression. And so it's like have a nutrition plan and follow it, right? And do your best. 90% is better than not having a plan. Have a plan for nutrition and have a plan for weightlifting. Don't fly by the seat of your pants, because you're gonna quickly become like disenfranchised by it, because you're not gonna make progress. Like the number one reason that people fall out of like exercising is because they don't see progress. Once you start to see progress, it's a self-fulfilling thing. Like you want to go because you're like, oh my gosh, look, I'm bigger, or I'm leaner, or I'm whatever. Like it starts to give you this positive feedback. And so if you don't have a plan, that's gonna be really hard. Like initially you'll make progress, like I talked about in the beginning of the podcast, 3 to 4 months, and it's gonna really level out and you're gonna be frustrated. So you need to have a plan for nutrition and a plan for training with weights, and then add some cardio in there. Number 2, like I said, like you need to make sure that you're mindfully training. Okay, be mindful. It's a mindful activity. It's not a mindless activity. So make sure you're being mindful, right? You're controlling the eccentric rep, like 3 seconds down, 1 second up. Make sure you're in control. And then number 3, excuse me, is make sure that you're actually progressing, right? Like make sure you're increasing weight. So it could be like you can increase weight by 2.5 to 5 pounds every week, right? That's the goal. And if you can't increase weight like on a week, like we can kind of go back to that example of I was doing 100 pounds for 10 reps and then 8 and then 6. Like if you can't, if you fail like 8 reps, let's say, when you're trying to increase weight, that's okay, but don't increase weight until you can get 10 reps on that first set. So you just kind of have to like use a little bit of common sense in there. It's like, you don't want to increase weight and then all of a sudden you're doing 4 reps, right? So and there's multiple ways to progress. You can progress by increasing weight, right? Every week, that's the easiest way. It's like add 2.5 to 5 pounds to each lift. If you're trying to do that and it's really dropping the amount of reps that you can do, like I see this a lot with women who are trying to do like shoulder press, for example, like there's a big jump between like a 25 and a 30 pound weight. Then you can increase reps. So it's like if you can do 10 like this, try next week to do 11 like this, right? And then 12, and then 13, 14, 15. And once you can do 15, you can usually do the 30 pound, let's say, for 10 reps. And so you can increase reps as a means to be able to get to more weight. And then you can also increase volume as a means to get to more weight. And that was like that first example. So it's like I do, 10 reps of 100 pounds, and then I can do 8, and then I can do 6. Well, next week, if you can do 10 reps or maybe even 11 reps, and then you can do 9, and then you can do 7, you're getting stronger, right? So that's part of the reason why it's important to actually like track and know like what you're actually doing, because if you don't track it, you don't know really, you're kind of guessing. And so if you can track that you're progressing on any of those fronts, like total reps, total strength, that's how you're going to get stronger. Like that's how you're going to continue to make progress. And this does slow down. Like at my stage, like I'm not making a ton of strength gains, so I had to play a little bit different game. But in the beginning, like all the way through intermediate, you can make a ton of strength gains, and strength gains are the easiest thing to aim for to make sure that you're building muscle. So those would be like my biggest tips: be in control of the weight, have a plan, and then make sure that you're progressive overloading and you have that like mind to muscle connection. If you're doing those things, you will make progress. Like you just will. And I'll say like last piece of advice for just like motivation. I always tell people you have to have like 2 motivators. Like everybody thinks about the future motivator, right? It's like, I want to look good for a wedding, or I want to look good for the beach, or I want to look good for that. But that's kind of hazy and like out there ways. I also say that, and that's good to have, it's good to have that motivator, but also say you need to have an immediate motivator and an immediate mover. And so this runs against what culture says, but what I honestly tell people to do is like, get down to like your underwear and stare in the mirror at yourself, right? What do you want to improve? And what that will cause is like a pain motivation, right? Because pain moves us immediately. Like the view of the future might not motivate us to consistently go. And so if you want a better physique, you need to come to terms with the fact that you don't have the physique that you want. And that pain, that like, oh, I don't really like that, will motivate you to go to the gym. And then it's just about habituation, like going consistently. So it's a habit. So you know that at 5:30 my butt's up and I'm going to the gym, or, like after work I'm going to the gym, or over lunch I'm going to the gym. Make it a habit. Those are the things that I think that can really help people. And stop, I would say just stop chasing comfort as part of the journey. Like comfort is not part of like really changing your physique. Like there's going to be some discomfort, but that discomfort leads you to a temporary sacrifice, right? Discomfort for long-term gain. It leads you to the place that you want to be as far as your physique. And so you kind of have to get in that mindset. And that's part of the reason why I really like weight training. Like I don't know about you, but it's like, it's one area of life where I have complete control. I'm to blame if I don't make progress, and I'm to blame if I make progress, right? It's like I can't accidentally eat a bag of chips. Like I had to make a choice, right? So I have full control over nutrition. I have full control over what I do in the gym. So that means I have full control over my results, and there's no one to blame. There's no luck. There's no anything. It's all on me. So it's like one area of life where I have a lot of control, and that brings me personally solace, because like a lot of life, you don't have a lot of control. And so that's the last thing I'll say about it. So that closes out episode 4. Is it episode 4?
I don't
episode 5, I believe, 4 or 5, Training True podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you learned something. As always, follow on all the socials. I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. Obviously YouTube, Spotify for the podcast. Make sure you follow those. Keep up with the videos. I'm always releasing new content for you guys to help. And I will see you guys next time.